Well, hello there, everybody. Welcome back. As you can see, I've been working through the environment that we build in Chapter 7. I haven't gotten to cleaning it up yet. For instance, I've got this tree right here that's kind of growing right through this building. Not so cool, but some of these other trees are pretty nice. They're fine where they are. I do want, I don't know, a little abandoned look or whatever going on. Now, so what we're going to take a look at is we're going to take a look at colliders, collisions, specifically. When we dropped this model in here from Arteria 3D, this medieval town, what we did to basically save time was we just used the mesh collider on everything. And what that did was it took the meshes, the little models that are built, and it just basically copied those and used those for collisions, which there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that works. It does what we need it to do. But there's a couple of things that could be problems that we're going to take a look at, talk about in this video, and also see how to fix. A couple other things really quick here before I get going too far into the video. First, notice that up here in my scene view, I've gone through and I've organized this a little bit better because it was starting to get complex with more and more things here, and I know that I'm going to be adding even more things to it. Teresa and the spiders and the sheep and other stuff and boundaries, which my boundaries aren't in here yet. I've still got to construct my boundaries as well. So what I've done is I just created empty objects. So you can just go, like if I stop the game here, I can just go game object create empty, and then I can call this whatever I want. So I could call this maybe checkpoints. Oh yeah, because eventually I'm going to have checkpoints in the game, and then I can have this checkpoints empty object, and I'll go ahead and put it at 000, not because I have to, but because it's easier to kind of think about it as this empty object actually being at that 000 point. And then anything that's a checkpoint object, once I add it, I can just make it a child of that, like this bridge is now a child of checkpoints. And that just makes this a little bit easier to view over here and kind of see what's going on. This kind of goes back to what we had talked about way back early on with our folders and our projects, keeping all of this organized so it's easier to find things. Same thing up here. We can get a scene view that is just amazingly long, and then we can't find stuff. Yeah, I know I've got this search. I can look there and try to find things. But what if I'm not really sure what it was called? There are times that we think we name things and we don't. So that's one little piece of housekeeping there. The other one is if you look at my trees are kind of misbehaving. This is a great example right over here. And this, you may or may not get this problem. This problem is predominantly, at the moment, being caused from me importing this into the newer version of Unity. So basically my materials on my tree here are kind of messed up. Down here at the bottom, I would get there'll be warnings down here that I need to use a certain material for my trees. But what I'm going to do, just kind of a quick fix, is I'm going to go ahead and fix these leaves really quick here. So if I come down here into my standard assets, this is where my trees were, if you remember. And speed tree, broadleaf. Broadleaf is the main tree. I've got my desktop materials because I'm actually using the broadleaf desktop model. And then in LOD0, which is the main material that I'm using for this, I have, or my main materials, I've got several different ones. I've got branches, I've got another branches, facing leaves, fronds, and leaves 3. Now, this one is the problem. Here are a couple ways I can tell it's the problem. Now I'm rotating my material view here just by holding left mouse button and moving the mouse. So there's a couple ways that I can tell that this is the problem. One is that this green background is showing up. You can see that green background out here as well. And the leaves should be more like this right here where it's transparent. You can also see it in the fronds. That's transparent as well. So my facing leaves are not transparent. And you can see out here they're not transparent. So then what is the difference? Why does this one work and this one doesn't? Well, let's take a look. This one is we see our settings up here, geometry type of leaf, there's our texture, our normal map, and some coloring stuff. Alright, so let's go back to facing leaves. Geometry type branch. Let's change that to leaf, and there we go, problem fixed. So that was, if you run into that problem, that is all you got to do, and we're good to go on that. So pretty easy fix there. Just a case of kind of looking around, find stuff, pay attention to what things are named, click around, notice what you think they should be doing versus what they are doing, and then kind of compare. If this is a leaf and it looks like that, then this one should have looked roughly the same. It didn't. Why? So let's compare our properties till we find it. Okay, so a little not really in the book's description for this video, but something too that I think fits, that we should go ahead and throw that in there. Alright, so back to our actual purpose of this video, which is our colliders. So let me close Sancho, and let me go into my environment, grab my medieval farm right here, and here are all the things in my medieval farm. Now let me separate these guys out just a little bit. Let's go find Sancho. Where you at, Sancho? There he is. Okay, let's click this guy right here. So this right here is the fence that Sancho is currently looking at. Alright, so let me zoom in here a little bit. Now, what we've got going on with this is all these, let's see, I'm going to turn off Mesh Renderer here for just a second. Now, all these green lines, this is the collider, okay? There you go. You can see that that is the collider. Now, the way that collisions work is that each one of these triangles are actually calculable within the physics systems for collisions. So, it has this triangle here collided with anything, this one, this one, this one. And so we can actually collide with any one of these triangles. This can actually increase the computation of our physics collisions. Now we need to ask ourselves whether or not we need that level of accuracy. If we were making, for instance, a shooter game, I might want the player to be able to shoot between these boards. In this game, that's not an option. If I'm making a sneaking thief style game, I might want the player to be able to sneak between these boards to go steal from something or whatever. Once again, that's not the kind of game I'm making here. So we do have to take into account the type of game when we're thinking about some of this stuff. Another example, let me see if I can, let's find it. Let's rotate. Let's take a look at this wall right here. So we got that wall right there. We'll turn off its mesh renderer, and there you can see all the stuff being used for its collision. And that is really more triangles than we need. We don't need this nice slope up there at the top. Sure, it gives us more accurate collisions, but we're sacrificing accuracy, or we have the potential of sacrificing performance for more accurate collisions right here. Plus, by increasing the collision count here and having that hit on our performance, that will in turn impact other decisions we have in the game. For instance, how many characters we can have out there, how much grass, particle systems, all of that kind of stuff. So it's a very careful decision you have to make on collisions. And as a general rule, use the smallest number of polygons or triangles necessary to get our collisions to work. And this is something that as you play games yourself, start looking at these collision boundaries. In fact, I'm sure you've noticed in many games, many major AAA titles, that you can walk out on a ledge, for instance, and look down at your feet, and your feet actually aren't standing on anything. The ledge that you're walking on is maybe a thin pipe, maybe like walking on top of this fence or something. And your feet are on either side of it, and you look at that and it's like, well, why am I standing here? You're standing there because there's a box collider around it instead of a mesh collider. And your character also has a box collider down there instead of separate things. So all of these, this is kind of the smoke and mirrors aspect of game development. So to fix this, what we would really want to do here, let's bring that back, is we really want to create custom colliders for each one of these things. Not terribly difficult to do, but it is more time consuming. So like I'm going to take this fence right here, fence section J, right? And I'm going to change this. So let's get it so we can see it a little bit better. So there's my fence section J. Currently it has a mesh collider. Let's turn that off. I'm going to get rid of my mesh collider, get rid of my mesh renderer as well. So there you go. You can see nothing's there. Now I can do add component, physics, and a box collider, you can see what that did. That's pretty cool. Now if we think about what's going on here, you can already see the amazing decrease in triangles as far as calculating this collision. There's a problem here though. This is a complete box. That means Sancho cannot run inside here. Whereas with the mesh collider, see that opening we had right there? We could run in there. Well, we can't with this. We have a box collider that forms a boundary around the whole thing. It also means that right inside here, we can't get there because that's part of the collision. So while I can do this box collider, and while it might work really well on many things, for instance, this, let me see if I can get it to select. Come on now. Rotate a little bit. Hold on. Okay, it's not letting me select it. Let's see, I want that part. That part. Nope, I got the ground again. Okay, so that is going to be a well. I'll just go grab it. There it is, well B, well A. So here we go. Here's this well, and you can see the triangle count that's involved in its collision. If I come over here, turn off the renderer, there, you know, very, very dense collision. Right? We don't need this high level of complexity. We could easily just go add component, physics, and we'll do a box collider on it. Let's turn off our mesh collider, and there's our collider. Now what this is doing is it's not going to let us get all the way up to this thing. So let's tweak this just a little bit. Okay? So we will get to where we can see it just a little bit better. We've got our center is fine. Let's change our size. Let's try on our X. I'm going to crush it right up to the edge there. I'm not going to worry about the roof. So the player can run through the roof. That's fine. Have fun with that player. I don't care. There we go. Okay, so I've made a nice tight box there. So let's take a look at how this looks in game. Okay, so I'm going to run over there. And let's see what we've got. Turn the corner. Okay, so as far as gameplay, I can run up to the well. Right? Now I can't get, you know, like right here, you can see I'm hitting this corner right here. So I can't get all the way up there. But for gameplay purposes, this is doing exactly what I need it to do. Let's take a look at what would happen if I put my mesh collider back on. So I don't have my box collider anymore. I've turned it off. Come back into here. Now as far as gameplay, the question to ask yourself is whether or not you're noticing any difference. Now you might be looking at this and thinking, well, you know, that same corner is stopping me. Right there, right? Isn't it? And that same corner appears to be stopping me. Well, let's find out. Is it stopping us? Let's grab Sancho. And let's take a look. Let's get up here. Sancho. Talk to me, Sancho. There's Sancho's collider. You see how it's hitting right out here? So no, actually that corner isn't stopping us. We're hitting the boundary right there. So as far as gameplay, we noticed zero difference between our really cool mesh collider and our really simplistic box collider. You know, our first thought is, oh, this box collider is going to be so lame, I don't want to use it. It made no difference in gameplay. And if we think about the computational difference here, calculated over the whole game, that could be quite a difference in performance of the game, which is really far more important to us than just you know, fancy collisions. Fancy collisions are great, but gameplay has to trump everything. So let's go back to my fence I was working on. I think it was fence section J. I think. Yeah, right there it is. Okay, so this box collider, let me make it visible again. And turn off my mesh, go to my box so we can see what I'm talking about here. So I've got this gate right here that maybe I want to be able to go through. Well, I can't. You're not allowed to. Denied. Okay, well, let's turn box collider off, go back to our mesh collider. Get back in here and notice something. I still can't go through. Alright, so when we're looking at that, we're like, that's going to be such a deal breaker. Well, why can't I go through? Because Sancho's collider is going around there, so I can't get through anyway. So going to box collider actually didn't change our ability to interact with this. But there's something we can do here. Let's stop this really quick. So I'm going to yank this box collider off fence section J. Not going to use that. And instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some boxes around here and build myself a different kind of collision. I'm going to build a custom collision system that is only going to be on these fences, and that I can then resize this opening so Sancho could actually get in there if I wanted him to. So we will go game object. Let's go with a 3D object and a cube. And there's my cube. And let me see here, fence section J. I got to turn my renderer back on so I can see it. I'm going to turn the collider off on it. Okay, cube. I'm going to grab it. I'm going to make it a child of fence section J. Okay, so now I've got this cube right there. Alright, cube is at those positions, and those positions are relative to fence section J. So let's hit this and that little gear, and we're going to go reset position, which will take it some random place. Okay, let's undo that. So we'll just manually place it right about here. Let's come over here. Okay, there we go. So we've got this rough placement here. We're now going to resize this. So let's see, change our X. Let's also change our rotation here. Let's make it 0. This thing doesn't need to be rotated. Okay, let's change our X. Oh, that X is still that one. Let's change our... Oh, that's the box collider I'm changing. Sorry. Having a mental moment here. Let's resize this X. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to resize this thing so that it fits over my fence. Something like that. That's pretty nice. And then let's resize, let's see, our Y. Nope, not our Y. Leave our Y right there. Resize our Z. We're going to say something like that. We're going to turn on our box collider. Let's turn off our mesh renderer. There we go. So now we've just got that box collider there. Cool. Let's make another one. So I'll select cube. I'll do a Control D. I've got another one right here, and I'm going to take this one, put it there. Then I'm going to go to my rotate. Let's rotate it. So I see I'm changing Y. So we'll go to 90 on that. Let's turn on our mesh renderer so it's a little bit easier to really see what's going on. Go back to our movement. And let's get this guy lined up. Okay, so that's along the Z axis right there. So let's scale our Z a little bit. No, that's not the Z. That's the X. Let's move it back down. Right about there. Get our X a little bit bigger. Come on, bigger, bigger, bigger. There we go. Alright, nice. Let's turn mesh render off on that. Let's go back to this first one that we had right there. And I'll do another Control D, duplicate that guy. And I'm going to move it all the way over here. Okay, now turn my mesh renderer back on so I can see it. Now I could just use the collider green lines, but you know, sometimes it's easier to work with actually seeing the mesh renderer. Let's move it over here. There we go. And then I will make one more copy of this guy, Control D. Move it down over here somewhere. Okay, let's scale it down on our X. Scale it down a little bit more. There we go. And I'm leaving my fence posts are not covered. Right? Okay, so let's grab 2 and 3. Let's turn off renderer. There we go. So we've got our colliders built all the way around this thing. If I select them all there, you can see my new custom collision system. It only covers the fence. I'm able to customize the sizes on these sides so I can possibly get Sancho through that gate if I want to, which, you know, why not? Be a cool thing for the Sancho to be able to do. So let's see if he can get through the gate now. He can run through that gate without a problem. So, you know, it takes a few minutes to build these custom collision systems, but when we do that, we end up having the ability to really customize what the player can and can't do with, you can almost think of these as boundaries if you want to. By sure, I've got this mesh here, and it becomes this natural thing of, well, the player shouldn't be able to go through that. Yeah, but like bushes, they should. So we can change things around and just have the player be able to go through the areas that we want them to and block other areas. So for instance, Sancho can run under here, but I could block that off if I wanted to. So I can go through the rest of my area and set up things however I want and get them all blocked the way that I would like them to be. Some other things that I would probably want to do as I kind of tweak and finalize this area, for instance, these tables here, maybe I want to scale these. They look like they're a good height, but they look kind of narrow, kind of skinny. Maybe I want to keep them that way, but I could always scale them to change their sizing. I could even scale these buildings to make them a little bit bigger because they do feel kind of small in comparison to Sancho. They're awful close, but they could be scaled so they fit better. Okay, so we got custom colliders on here as opposed to our mesh colliders. We looked at the difference on how we can set up that system for our fence, and also the well house, how that changed that. Also fixed a minor bug that may or may not appear with the trees up there. If you're importing the trees from our project, you very likely will run into that problem importing that into the newer versions of Unity, in which case, pretty straightforward fix right there. And if you have any questions on this, feel free to just drop a question down below and we'll get back to you just as soon as we can.